Okay, so then go ahead and begin here. So this year, and that's when we get a little doctrinal conference, family conference before the ordinations. So far we got our hottest year. I think it's going to be hotter. Is it hotter tomorrow?
Supposed to cool down.
Supposed to cool down a little bit. Okay. And then, so.
But it'll change.
That's what I'm saying. This was raining. So anyway, so this weekend, yeah, it's 11/28. That's good. And then we'll try to replace that. I don't know if the one in your hand might be bad. If you get a chance, can replace it. I think we changed the battery on it several times.
It looks like it was newly installed on the 29th of October in 2029. We didn't get a writing on it.
Okay, that's Buck.
Yeah, I'll,
Buck's really into, yeah, dates. Yeah, so in any case, so this year I wanted to cover, we do a little philosophy class. So, and that we do a little bit of first introduction to philosophy, and then also moral philosophy or ethics, and then try to deal with a couple of, if we have time later on, we'll deal with the issue of doubt, the decisions on doubt, because doubt is something you deal with on a daily basis, and what's the moral rules about doubt. We get time later on to do that. But to begin with, just a basic introduction to philosophy, and that and then applying to not dealing so much with scientific contism, full treatise on scientific contism, but with two particular problems of the scientific contism, and also the problem of the liberal side on the indult, which is very similar, and that scientific contism considered from the philosophical perspective. Because right now there's a very popular thesis. It wasn't popular a few years ago, but it is now because of Bishop Sanborn, and also because it's a very easy way. Now scientific contism has the belief that the Pope is not. The Pope is spreading both in the Novus Ordo and amongst tradition, and it's a grave error. And then here to consider a particular thesis which has become very popular, and that is called the Cassisiacum thesis. So it's a complicated name, but Cassisiacum is a place of rest, and it's where Bishop Gerard de Laurier came up with his thesis on scientific contism, which is called the material formal thesis. So that materially, Leo XIV and John Paul II and Paul VI, etc., were popes, but they weren't formally popes. So they're pope, not pope. So the pope is the pope, not the pope. And so, and they say materially the pope, but it's not formally the pope, right? So that it's like someone being alive and not alive, and being dead and not dead. So you're either dead or you're not dead. You're either alive or you're not alive, but you can't be alive, not alive, and dead, not dead. So we have to, in other words, it's something which God could not do. God cannot make a square circle. God can turn a circle into a square, in which case it's no longer a circle. God can turn a square into a circle, in which case it's no longer a square, but God cannot make a square circle. It's a metaphysical impossibility, which means not even God can do it. And material formal is a metaphysical impossibility, even among scientific contism. Then we'll lay out the general decisions that scientific contism has to make, and then the philosophical, theological foundations. So not an actual treatise, but just a few considerations. And we begin with philosophia, and that philosophy. So philosophy is the scientius definition. We'll write on the board. Scientium rerum omnium per altissimas causas. Now think about philosophy. Where's my stick? It was here. Ben had it. Because he pushed the button there.
All the way at the end.
See, he pushed the button. Ah, okay. So then philosophy, the scientium rerum omnium per altissimas causas. So it's the science of all things. Here's the key words. Omnium. That means all things through the deepest or highest causes. So, every human being has philosophy. Philosophy means the love of wisdom. Philo, love, Sophia, wisdom, the love of wisdom. But philosophy is a science of all things through the highest causes. And one of the great lies of the last 500 years was to diminish philosophy to where people tell you that it's not very important. In fact, when we say you reach the age of reason, when you're 7 years old, or 5 years old, or if you're from Kentucky, 15, when you reach the age of reason, right, then you reach the age of philosophy. Philosophy. And by the way, philosophy is only singular. No one can have two philosophies. Everybody has only one philosophy, and human beings are philosophical creatures. We are creatures who are made this way. Remember that it took a long time to get to the lie of where we are today. And the key was to kill St. Thomas Aquinas and to kill the nature of the way human beings are. We are receivers of the knowledge of the world outside of us. We understand that world, and we act according to that understanding. Man is called, what kind of a creature is man? There's two definitions of man, right? So man is a rational or political animal, right? Man is a rational animal, right? So man is, what makes human beings different from other creatures is that we are rational. So that when you eat a hamburger, and when a dog eats a hamburger, it's a different thing. The dog simply follows his impulses, follows his instincts, and he eats a hamburger. Human beings cannot do that. We have to make a rational choice. We have to decide to eat the hamburger. And there are many steps to that decision. We'll consider that in another class. We're going to do the moral philosophy. That, how do you go about deciding to eat a hamburger? It's a 12-step program, just like AA. You have to go through 12 steps in order to be able to get out of bed in the morning. You got to go through 12 steps to eat a hamburger. And so we can't go through every one of the 12 steps, but the general movement of what happens. What is it? We human beings are rational animals. What makes us different from the other creatures is rationality, the fact that we can think. And this thinking applies not only to spiritual things, it applies to breakfast. So that when you eat breakfast, you have to decide to eat the hamburger and not the plate, whereas a dog doesn't have to decide that. Because if you want to, you can eat the plate. We have the example in the sacred scripture where an angel came to Daniel, an angel came to St. John, the apostle. He did the same thing. Angel came to Daniel the prophet, and he said, here is a papyrus. Eat it. When an angel says eat it, you eat it. Because he's going to kill you if you don't. So he wasn't naturally inclined to eat paper. But when the angel said eat it, he felt spiritually motivated. And he ate it. If you told a dog to do that, you could kick him, you could beat him, but he wouldn't understand. You could kill him too. He wouldn't comprehend. He couldn't decide to eat it. But a human being can. So we have the ability to decide to eat paper if we want. So that even when we eat, we're always using our mind. And so human beings are rational. They are animals, we have bodies, but we are rational. So say John the Evangelist could have been told, eat that paper, and he ate it. Eat the book, he ate the book. And so it's possible. It's also possible to be starving to death, to someone to give you a hamburger, and you refuse to eat it. So whether you eat or refuse to eat, you have to make a rational choice. What makes us human beings different from the other creatures, other than the angels is that we are rational. What makes us different from the angels is that we are animal. Unlike angels, we have bodies and passions. Unlike animals, we have a mind and a will. And so we are connected to the real world around us. We've got an intellect and we've got a will, right? And these things are rational. In Latin, it's called liberum arbitrium, which means free judgment. In English, we say free will. Free will as if it's only one part of you. Your heart decides. No, it's judgment free. Judgment free. Free part's the will, the heart. Judgment is the intellectual part. Unless you have both, you've got nothing. So we human beings are rational animals, and we live in a real world. How do we connect to that world? How do we act in that world? What makes us do the things we do in that world? It is our philosophy. So you could say the age of reason could be called the age of philosophy. St. Thomas Aquinas, for instance, says, the very first choice that you make when you reach the age of reason, 6 years old, 7 years old, is always the final end. That means God or yourself. There's only two ends. God, purpose of all my actions, or me, purpose of all my actions. This act can never be a venial sin. It can only be an act of virtue or a mortal sin. So the first rational act of a child cannot be a venial sin. It's either a mortal sin or an act of virtue. If the child is raised in a Catholic family, a moral family, 99% of the time, his first act is going to be a good act. If he's raised in a bad family, in bad circumstances, 60, 70% of the time, his act is going to be a bad act. But he's still going to make a free will act that only he can make. And he's going to decide, why do I do all the things I do? So philosophy is the scientium. This is where it all begins. Our philosophy has to be first. You have to wait till you're 7 years old before you can make a free will act, because you have to fill your mind with enough information. Once it has sufficient information, then you can make a choice. Without sufficient information, you cannot make a choice. You don't have to know everything, but you have to know many things, and then bam, you can make a choice. So philosophy is where it all begins. You begin to learn philosophy when somebody says you electric outlet bad, and like I did when I was a kid, did a test, and I found out that it was right. They were speaking the truth. And when a child takes everything and puts it in his mouth, what's he trying to do? He's trying to learn the nature of that thing. What is it? I learn it by seeing. I learn it by touching, by tasting. So we naturally are going to taste it. Is this, what is this? We're learning information about the real world around us. So if you want to destroy mankind, make them followers of Satan, prepare the way for the Antichrist, what do? Corrupt man's philosophy. And everything else will follow. If you want to get man back to God, what do you got to do? Correct his philosophy. And then everything else might follow. Because you have to make choices, and you have to fight against original sin. You have to fight against the desire to fall down. So even though you know the truth, you do not necessarily live the truth. But if you do not know the truth, you cannot live the truth. So the philosophy is not just a science that you study when you go to the seminary or go to college. It is a necessary science that every human being has in his life. It is one science, scientium, that is certain knowledge through causes. Okay, it is scientium is certain knowledge, cognitia certa per causas. So when you go into a room and you push this button, you lift things, and that little plastic thing makes the lights turn on. But you don't know what it is. You just go around pushing stuff until the lights turn on. At some point, the lights turn on, but you don't know why they turned on. When you start to understand the cause, that is the plastic thing called the light switch is that which makes the lights turn on. Now I'm beginning to have science. I'm beginning to understand that this light switch is causing the lights to go on. I can cause it, I can make it turn on all the time by just walking in, hitting buttons, and it turned on. I don't know why it turned on. I know that if you hit this button, it turns on, but I don't know what it does. But if I understand that that light switch is somehow connected to that light and also connected to a power source, and then through this light switch I'm able to turn on that light, through this light switch I'm able to turn off that light, I'm beginning to have science. That is, cognitia certa per causas. I know that when I come into this room and it's dark, I know with a certain knowledge that if I flip on the light switch, it's going to turn on, provided electricity is functioning. And so that's scientium. Now, we have scientium, science about everything. But the science that governs all things is the science, one science of all things through the deepest and highest causes. And this science is called philosophy. We human beings are rational animals, and that what makes us different from the other creatures is our rationality. But we're going to look at the real world, and we start with, like we begin in the seminary, we learn from Plato and Aristotle, what is it that philosophy is about? All things. What do all things have in common? We say in Latin, all things have in common esse, which is Mexican for dude. But esse is 2 letters in English. Is. So you spend 3 years in the seminary studying this word, is, or esse. Esse means real, existent thing on the outside. Esse, right? So we have this that we're all we're doing. But all things have in common: God, devil, rocks, animals, everything is. They exist. There's something they have in common, and that's isness, or esse. Esse is its existence in the real world. And when you be born, when you're in the mother's womb, your mind is 100% perfect. Your will is 100% perfect. But you're not able to see is. You're cut off from esse. Hence, unless you're St. John the Baptist, you don't have any knowledge. Unless you get inspired, infused knowledge in the womb, like St. John the Baptist, you can't know anything, though your mind is 100% perfect all those 9 months. There's nothing wrong with it. However, it has no knowledge because it's got to get the esse sucked into it. So when you go out into the real world, the esse comes into it. You go into the world, and the esse comes in through the senses. There's esse of the tree, and the green, and the branches, and the bark is all, your mind is like a magnet, and it sucks everything into it. It takes 7 years usually to get sufficient information to be able to make a free will choice. But you've got to, whether you want to or not, you suck it in. That's why John Donne has this poem, the Englishman John Donne, the eye it cannot choose but see, we cannot bid our ears be still. Our bodies feel where'er they be, against or with our will. The eye it cannot choose but see. It's going to see whatever is in front of it. The ear necessarily receives, so it's not a matter of choice. You can only decide where to turn your head, but you cannot decide to see. You can decide to close your eyes, you can decide to turn your head, but you cannot decide to see. You can decide to close your ears, you can decide to open your ears, but you cannot decide to hear. The information comes in, and this information coming in is filling us with the reality of what is in the outside in the real world. And one thing about the real world is that there are degrees of isness. Everything is. God is, an ant is, a rock is, an angel is, a speck is. Everything is. But they're not the same degree of is. Some things have more esse than another. And hence we start with the degrees of being from Plato, Aristotle. And we lay out a hierarchy of being. The very top is God. He just is. God is ipsum esse per se subsistens. That's what he told Noah. Ipsum esse per se subsistens. He just is. That's why, strictly speaking, if somebody says to you, does God exist? You can say, no, God doesn't exist. Because exist means ex, out of is. Everything except for God comes out of God. God just is. He doesn't come out of anything, right? So that God does not ex is, God is. He is pure being, right? And so the highest of all beings is the being that is being. And everything else that is comes from that is. So ipsum esse, that is existence itself, subsisting through itself. That God is, I am who am. If you've seen the Ten Commandments by Cecil B. DeMille, when it goes to the scene of Noah speaking to God, he doesn't say that. Noah. Or not Noah, Moses. Moses, right? What does he say to Moses? I am who I am. Or I am that I am. What's the problem with that? What's the difference between what it says in the Ten Commandments movie, I am that I am, and I am who am? What's the difference between those two statements? Who does I am that I am apply to? Does it apply to Fido, your dog? Can he say I am what I am? Is a dog what he is? Yes. What about your cat? What about you? Only one difference is Father Parker. The philosophy of Father Parker goes, it's not what it is. So one of our philosophy guys, he says, it's not what it is. But if it's not what it is, what is it? So if I am that I am, that's what it says in that movie. I am that I am. Isn't that nice? It's called, no, it's a heresy, it's a blasphemy, and it's caca, which is another name for peanut butter. I am that I am. God is not that I am. God is. God am, not Shazam, but am. I am who am. And he said, go tell the people, he who is sent you. Remember, he said, go and tell the people, he who is. So when the Jews in Hollywood made that movie, do you think it was a mistake, by the way? This made a little bitty grammatical error and added the word that. What does that word do? Changes the meaning. God is ipsum esse per se subsistens. He is. There is no is without coming from God. Outside of is, there is nothing, which is less than the word, because nothing has letters in it and a sound. Real nothing does not have letters in it and doesn't have a sound. It's nothing. I am that I am. Ten Commandments movie. It's a blasphemy, it's a heresy, it's a lie, it's a bunch of baloney. You're not supposed to note the word that in there. The very highest part of being is the being that is being, and that is God. And then, so I am that I am. There's a baloney from the movie The Ten Commandments. Right? He who is. So the degrees of being. Some things have more is than other. The most is the creature that is. Everything else has is. If you have is, then you can lose the isness that you have. God is the creature or the creator. God is the being who does not have anything. Whatever you have, you can lose. God does not have anything. God just is. But everything else has. What do we have? We have degrees of is. Some have more is than another. And that's the way it is in all things. Nothing has the same degree of is in it. Everything has more is or less is, and there's a relationship to all other is. The first is the basic foundation of is. The things that have is. These are the things that exist. And that is, first of all, the angels. And then below the angels, what comes next? Man, then the animal kingdom, then plants, then the mineral kingdom, then the non-living things, non-living things in the stars, which equals the non-living things of stars and the planets and so on. The non-living things in the earth, non-living things in the heavens, non-living things in the earth, the minerals, the mineral kingdom, rocks and so on. So each thing has a degree of isness in it. And there's a principle in the land of is. So God is itself. But this has nothing to do with what people think. Here's one of the problems of modern philosophy. They've learned in the last 200 years, most philosophers teach you, philosophy is a science of learning what smart people think. So modern philosophy equals, you've got to learn the science of the fat guy. What did St. Thomas think? St. Thomas's thoughts. Then you got the science of Immanuel Kant, skinny German dude. Then you got the science of Heidegger, Husserl. You got the science of Aristotle. You got all the sciences of, what is philosophy? Philosophy equals, that's what St. Thomas thought in his brain. He was really smart. What Aristotle thought in his brain, he was really smart. What Kant thought in his brain, he was kind of smart. And all these people, that's what people believe philosophy is now. What do smart people think? That is not philosophy. Because philosophy is the study of all things. Not St. Thomas, not Aristotle, not Immanuel Kant, not Plato, none of those guys, right? Especially not Duns Scotus. The fact is, science is not the study, philosophy is not the study of what smart people think. It is the science that is certain knowledge through causes of all real things. Now, we human beings, we have to choose to believe a certain science, hence we can have a false philosophy. We can believe the wrong things. You can believe that the bridge is open. You can believe that the bridge is out. If the bridge is open, to believe it's out is false. If the bridge is out, to believe it's open is false. Both cases, there's only one real truth about that bridge. Your philosophy, however, can be multiple. You can falsely believe that it's there when it's not there, or you can correctly believe that it's there and working when it is there. And you can falsely believe that it's gone when it's not gone, and you can correctly believe that it's gone when it is gone. You can have multiple philosophies about the bridge, but there's only one true philosophy about the bridge. What's the status of the real bridge? And philosophy is the science of studying what's the status of the real world as it really is. Why do we follow St. Thomas and Aristotle and Plato? Because they knew the real world better than anybody else. Just like you take a car to a mechanic. You don't take a car to a mechanic because he's a really smart guy and you really like him. You take a car to a mechanic because he knows about cars. When you take the car to the mechanic, it doesn't work, come back and it works. You don't care about the mechanic, you care about the car. And the good mechanic is the guy that makes the car work and understands the car. The bad mechanic is what makes you lose a lot of money and the car doesn't work. Doesn't matter whether he's smart, stupid. What matters is, does he know about the car? Can he fix the car? Is the car going to work when I bring it back from the mechanic? What matters is the real world. And philosophy is the most important and most real of all sciences. Nothing's more important than that. So, and this is one science that covers everything, not just the nature of a car, the nature of, you can study botany, the nature of plants, you can study mechanics, the nature of vehicles and automobiles, you can study, psychology, the nature of the soul. Philosophy is nature of everything. No exceptions. You screw this up, and you've screwed up everything. Well, this is exceedingly important. First, we have to understand is, and this is something people naturally knew before the 20th century. Without anybody teaching you, before the 20th century, people understood this hierarchy of being. Even today, people understand it. I had a guy talk to me a few years ago, and he said, I love my daughter's dog more than my daughter. I said, okay. The dog's in California, and he was in New York. This is a few years, it's changed now. This is back in the 90s. Would you buy a $2,000 plane ticket to fly to California to go to your daughter's dog's funeral? Now they would, for sure. But back, he said, hell no. Would you buy a $2,000 ticket to go to your daughter's funeral? Yeah. He would. Why is that? Because he recognizes his daughter has more is, partly because she's 400 pounds. She has more is than the stinking dog who only weighs 50. Now, the fact is, she's got more is inside of her. There are degrees of is. Now, angels have more is than man. And here's the principle about the degrees of being, which you actually intuitively know, even if you haven't heard this before. That is, the more, we won't use the word spiritual, because when you hear the word spiritual, you think of holy things, so that's not the right word to use. The more immaterial a thing is, equals more real. More immaterial things are more real. And the more material a thing is, the more matter it has, equals less real. So as an example, which has more is in it? An ant or Mount Everest? An ant has almost infinitely more is in it than Mount Everest. Mount Everest is a big, huge rock that's really hard to climb. And Mount Everest doesn't have that much to it. But an ant has infinitely more to it. The ant has self-movement. The ant's got, is it 6 legs? Or 8, right? It's 6, right? The ant has 6 legs. The ant works for a living. The ant has all kinds of things about it that if you spend your whole life studying an ant, even if you're not interested in doing that, what do you know for certain if you spend your whole life studying an ant? Well, if you spend your entire life studying an ant, at the end of your life, would you know all there is to know about ants? Absolutely not. Would you even know half? Absolutely not. There is so much to an ant. He's got so much more is in him, there's no comparison between the is of an ant and the is of Mount Everest. Non-living things have less is in them than living things. Plants have less is in them than animals. Plants can't, they have interior self-movement, they grow and have nutrition, They don't have exterior self-movement. They can't walk around or fly. So they have less self-movement than an ant. And then between a dog and a human being, which one is more immaterial? Which one has more immaterial to him? The human being does. Why? He's got more is inside of him. His soul does not have to follow the instincts of his body. His soul can guide his body to do worse things than it's inclined to do, or to do better things than it's inclined to do. But in any case, his soul is not enslaved to his body, whereas a dog's soul is. So there's more is in man, and there's more is in an angel. So what's the pattern? The more immaterial, more real. The less immaterial, the less real. The more material, less real. The less material, more real. And also we discover that the more material that you have, you tend to be less real. So you see what our Lord talked about poverty for human beings. Why is it important for us to have spiritual poverty? All are obliged to pay in mortal sin to have spiritual poverty. That is, you're supposed to be detached from the things in such a way that you'll give them up rather than giving up God. And then some take the vow of poverty. Why does it make sense then that you would take poverty? Why is those who have the vow of poverty greater than those who do not have the vow of poverty? It's very simple, less material. Because they're less material and they're more immaterial. And this is the nature of things. The nature of things. Now, this is true also of the body. If you take a sledgehammer and you take a baseball bat and swing it at your head, if it hits your head, what's going to happen? It crushes your head open, you're going to die. So what does your body do without you thinking about it? You don't have any weapon. You don't have any stick. What do? You lift your arm up. Why do you do that? Because the arm is more, you can say either way, the arm is more material than the head. And it is less immaterial than the head. Well, anyone telling you, you know that if I lift my arm, I don't want my arm to break, but I don't have a stick, I don't have any means to block. Without anyone telling me, a stick is coming to my head, bam. Why do I do that? Because my body knows the head has more is in it. It's got more essay than the arm. And more essay takes precedence over less essay. Right? That's why, for instance, the king, right? When the bullet is flying at the king, what does the soldier do? It's not even something to be a great hero. It's like a natural thing to do. Why does a mother jump in the way of the bullet, depending upon which son it is? So, why does the mother jump in front of the bullet? How is it that a child is more immaterial than a mother? And how is it a child is more real than a mother? How is that? Because a child is more real than a mother. Yes, multiple. But what is it about a child? What's a child with regard to the human race? And what's a mother and a father with regard to the human race? What is it? Yeah, innocent, that's true. But I'm talking about the life of the human race, the existence of the human race, from that perspective. The child is a continuation of the human race. The mom and dad are has-beens. They used to be wannabes, now they're has-beens, and they never were. So they went from wannabes to has-beens. So mommy and daddy are has-beens, and the child is the future. So without anyone telling you, a mother instinctively knows the child is worth more than the mother because the child is the future of the whole human race. And if you think about everything, even with regard to our decisions, the more immaterial one is always more important than the material one. And even amongst immaterial things. Like, for instance, which one is more real? If you're going to desecrate, if they're going to desecrate statues and crucifixes, and you can only grab 2 statues, You're going to grab the statue of Christ and Blessed Virgin Mary before you grab St. Philomena and St. Barbara. So so without even thinking about it, if there's someone who's going to desecrate the church, what's the first thing you do? Even if you're a layman, if they're going to destroy the church, what can you do with the tabernacle? If they're coming in to desecrate the host, what can you do? What is it? Yes, you open the tabernacle, and what do? You consume the hosts, right? So it's happened actually multiple times in the history of our church. It may happen again as they persecute the church. So if there's no priest around, you can't get the priest, they're going to come in and desecrate by the sacrament. You go in, you open the tabernacle, and you consume all the hosts. And then you try to save the statues and the bell and whatever else you can save. But what are you doing? You know automatically which is the most valuable thing, rerum, inside of that church. Well, it's the Blessed Sacrament. And then it'll be the sacred vessels and the statues. Last of all, you'll take maybe the pews and whatever. If you have time, you can save the whole thing, like the Iranians said they did with their nuclear facility. What was it called? Was it Fordo? What's that place called? Fordo or what is it? Fordo. Yeah, Fordo. Apparently they pulled everything out before we blew it up. So apparently we blew up a hole in the ground, and now it's a bigger hole in the ground so they can put more stuff in it. So, right? So if you have time, you pull the stuff out, right? But without even people telling you, you're going to go for the more immaterial thing. House is on fire. What do? You save the child, the human being, first. Then you save the other thing second. We had the exception here when my house burnt down. The house that I was raised in on the parking lot burnt down on February 24th, 2013. First thing they saved was the donuts. Because it burnt down on Sunday, and the coffee and donuts were in grave danger. They saved the donuts, and that's not a joke. They really went in and saved the donuts. Right? That was a priority. And they also saved the fire extinguisher, because you wouldn't want that to catch on fire. They didn't that would no, but you had to save it. So they saved the donuts and the fire extinguisher. So the house obviously didn't make it. But in any case, this is something that we know naturally as human beings. The more immaterial is more real. More material is less real. Now that we human beings recognize that there is one real world. And as we oftentimes begin at the beginning of the Ignatian retreat, you recognize there's one world. There's only, here's the universe. In it, you got the sun that we often mention at the beginning of the retreats. You got the earth. You got the tree. And one thing we recognize about the universe, the sun is 93 million miles away. The tree is green and got wood on it, and the earth is dirt. But without anyone telling you, recognize they belong together. They're actually part of one reality, not two realities. The sun helps the tree turn green, puts nutrients into the soil with the vitamin D that nobody has nowadays because everybody's on computers and nobody gets sun anymore. So that this sun is really and truly related to these things. And then the tree is making the soil not corrode, and there's nutrients in the soil that make the tree happy, and they're all working together. And that's 93 million miles away. And you'll notice that about every part of the universe. Everything you see, there's a relationship between them, and you'll notice that natura nico vanet in ane, right? Nico agit in ane. Nature does nothing in vain. You can't find a useless thing in nature, including your appendix. Every single thing has a purpose, and there's nothing useless in nature. Everything is related to another, and that's the way the real world really is. So it has nothing to do with religion. This is just the way the world is. And so that we got here the nature of things, so that there is a degree of being. The scientium regum omnium per altissimas causas is part of our life. God is the highest being, ipsum esse per se subsistens, that's the height of all philosophy. He's esse, existence itself, subsisting per se, through himself, without any help on the outside. Angels have existence. They have esse, and they have degrees. Since you have esse, you can have more esse, or you can have less SA, right? And the most SA is in an angel. Then there's less SA in a man. There's less SA in an animal, less SA in plants, less SA in the heavenly things, less SA in the things of the earth. And so that there are SA existence in all of these things, and there's a relationship and a harmony between them. So the Scientium Rerum Omnium per altissimas causas, there are degrees of being. And every time we make a decision, it's going to be on the degrees of being. It'll always be that way, right? More immaterial, more real, less material, less real. We say today we exist in a materialistic society, which is kind of easily misunderstood. We exist in a materialistic society. Today our world is materialistic. Yes?
What has caused man to reverse that order?
Two things. One, of course, a natural corruption, but primarily an organized perversion that's taken place in 700 years. Started with William of Ockham back in 1300. And it took 700 years to get where we are today. It was an organized corruption of the human mind. And it's taken 700 years to get where we are today. It doesn't happen naturally. We do naturally get weaker. We do naturally go after material things. But to make this shift requires organization, requires time. And it's described in the sacred scripture. And when we talk about the kings, in the book of Kings, he committed the sins of his father, and he added many others besides. Then his son committed the sins of his father, and he added many other besides. And he committed the sins of his father and added many other besides. So that's what's happened over many generations. To get where we are today was a very long journey. And it's a total destruction of nature. And also it's caused by Satanism. And Satanism is described by Pope Innocent III, who was called witchcraft back then. He has a bull on witchcraft. And he says it's caused by Satanism. Or witchcraft, and witchcraft is called, the definition of witchcraft equals witchcraft or Satanism is defined as the ordered destruction of all order. There's two ways to get rid of order. One of them is your kids. They just run around and destroy things. They don't really know what they're doing. But then there's ordered destruction. So an example of that is taking down the World Trade Center. In order to do it effectively, you've got to place the thermite and the bomb charges in precisely the right location. You then have to set them off at the correct time, and you have ordered destruction. Another ordered destruction is called the army. The army is different from a mob because an army has ordered destruction. The artillery is going to hit this way. The airplane is going to come in on time. You're going to shoot your weapons effectively. You're going to coordinate your groups to kill the enemy and to destroy his land. Ordered destruction. The key is ordered. Not destruction, but ordered destruction. So it took 700 years to get where we are today. But we're now in a materialistic society, and so I had a little drawing, but through my I had sister trying to get it on there, but that thing won't work now. It's still dead. Still dead, right? Yeah. So it overheated, I guess. It hasn't come back to life yet, so we have to give it a. You know, so yeah. But in any case, we would say we're in a materialistic society, and so it took 700 years to get where we're going. And remember, we're dealing with free will. Free will makes life rather complicated, right? It's like when you're playing chess, and the pawns can decide to become white pawn to black pawn. They can decide to leave where you put them. They can decide to stay there when you tell them to go. All of a sudden, chess becomes a far more complex game because you're dealing with free will. The king decides to leave, checkmates himself. So, so you go out, when you're doing chess with free will creatures, it's rather complicated. The principles are always the same, but to put it into practice is very complicated. But we now are in an age that is materialistic. So we'll come to that. And whereas the real world, so in any case, they're going to quickly go back to the four causes. Every single thing that exists is caused. St. Thomas Aquinas says there are everything that exists is either caused or uncaused. Well, the first existence, proof of the existence of God. You're either caused, that means something else made you come into being, or you're uncaused, which means you just are. That's God. He just is. When we look at all the beings around us, in English we say the word being, which would be in Latin ens. Being. Being is the nature of the thing that is. Being can be both in the thing itself and it can be extracted from the thing and put in my head. Esse is the thing itself only. That's the reality out there. We can extract esse, put it in our heads, and it will be called ens. It'll be, because ens rationis and ens realis. There's ens, there's being of the real world, and there's being that goes inside of the mind, which is taken from the real world. So the ens, everything that exists is either caused or uncaused. Dogs, angels, man, all things we discover are caused. We come from something else. We come from somewhere else. And how many causes are there? We can narrow it down, talk about philosophy, the deepest, the altissimas causas. Altissimas causas. What are the deepest causes? Right? Like one of the great lies, an example of foolish causes. Many people today tell you, why is Donald Trump doing what he does? Why are the Bilderbergers doing what they do? Why is everybody doing what they're doing and the world falling apart? Well, no, it's the Democrats. And why are they doing it? Money. Money is a cause, right? Money is a cause kind of like this. But the real cause is a little bit bigger, right? There's things bigger than money that cause us to do the things we do. Some people do things for the sake of money, like Joe Biden. He's very simple. He's got no brains. He's got nothing. Before he got Alzheimer's, he never had a brain. Joe Biden just simply did whatever he did for the sake of girls and money. That's it. He was a standard, worthless king. They've been around for 6,000 years. That's all he is. Standard, worthless king. Give him girls, give him money, he'll do whatever you want him to do. He doesn't care about God, dog, anything except for girls and money. He's a peon, right? Nothing. But there are big causes, right? Deeper causes that make things the way they are. And also remember, we human beings are rational. Erase it from the board. We are rational. You don't do anything without a reason, including when you're stupid. You don't do anything without a reason. All things are done for a reason for human beings. We often don't admit it, even to ourselves, what the reason is, but human beings do all things rationally. There are four causes. And we'll go through them a little bit later, but that's okay. The four causes. Always do the example. I'll go through it again, because I got a little drawing that's supposed to be on that thing, because my drawings aren't the most beautiful. That's a table. We always use this example of the four causes. In order for a table to come to existence, there are four things required. First of all, there is the final cause. That is, there has to be a reason to make this thing. And the reason, of course, is dinner. Okay. There has to be a reason. Now, the final cause is first thing. We say that the final cause is primum intentione, demum in executione. It's the first thing in the intention, and the last thing in the execution. Right? The first thing you think about, the last thing is accomplished. It all begins with the final cause. That's why, for instance, when you look at the world exists. Why does it exist? It has to have a final cause. Why is there an angel? Why is there a rock? Why is there any and every living thing and non-living thing? Glory of God is the reason. All things are for the glory of God. God decided to create the world ex nihilo, out of nothing, for a final cause. And there are only two possible final causes, himself or nothing. Those are the only things that exist forever, God and nothing doesn't exist. God created the whole world for himself. So the final cause is the first of the causes. It's called the causa causarum. This is called the causa causarum, right? This is the cause of the causes. Remember, when you make mistakes, generally, it's because you forgot the final cause. You forget why you did something, right? You forget why you came in the room. You forget why you started a construction project. You forgot why you got married. You forget all kinds of things. And when you forget the final cause, trouble comes in. So it's a causa causarum, and we have to keep it in mind. First cause is the final cause. And that's the primum cause. Then there is the efficient cause. So I've got my little drawing, but we'll have to come back to that. I'll hit it again tomorrow. The efficient cause, and hopefully get this thing working. And the efficient cause is the one who's going to make this final cause happen. So we're talking about a table here. We want place to eat dinner. I need a place to eat dinner like a rational human being, not a drive-through. So I need a place to eat dinner like a rational human being. So that's the final cause. I need a dude to create this thing that's going to make it possible to eat dinner like a rational human being. That dude is called a carpenter. So there's going to be a carpenter, the efficient cause. Then there is the third cause, which is called the material cause. And that equals the stuff that I'm going to use to make it possible to have a place to eat dinner. And that stuff is called wood. Or stone or plastic. We got a little drawing, which I can't show you right now because of that. Because my drawing's like this. So I had Sister Bernard do a quick drawing at 2 o'clock in the morning when she was asleep, or half asleep. So anyway, we got a problem with that. Material cause. And then there is the fourth cause, which equals the formal cause. That's the cause. That is what the thing is. That's the most important of all the causes, the formal cause, and that equals table. In this case, dinner table. You can have a dinner table, you can have a work table, you can have multiple kinds of tables. So this is a dinner table, right? Dinner table is what this whole thing is. It's got a material cause, which is 4 wooden legs and a top. It's got an efficient cause, which is a carpenter. It's got a final cause, which is place to eat dinner. And everything that exists has 4 causes. So we've got to analyze what are the 4 causes of everything. And understanding the 4 causes is very important. And that so there is what is it that you need when you're going to do things according to the causes. There's the final cause, physical cause, material cause, and the formal cause. So what equals the cause? What's the purpose of the activity? Everything that exists has these 4 causes. And that that's going to apply. We'll deal with that with regard to the problem of the caesis acum thesis, which is the material formal. And this material cause, we're now in a materialistic society, coming from Charles Darwin, from Immanuel Kant, from modern guys. And the material cause, of all the 4 causes, the least cause, the least important cause, and the very last cause in time is the material cause. In an upside-down world, What's the devil going to do? Make the material cause the most important cause. So one simple example. In 1918, they decided that there are too many drunks in the world. What's the material cause of drunkenness? What do you need to get physically to get drunk? You need alcohol. A materialistic society decided the cause of drunkenness is beer and whiskey. How do we get rid of drunkenness? Remove the material cause, and there can be no drunkenness. So if you make alcohol illegal, make drink illegal, then obviously what's going to happen? There will be no more drunks. Why? Because we're a materialistic society. Translation, stupid society. And a materialistic society says the material is what matters. The thing is what matters. The material is what matters. And this applies to everything, the material cause. It's the least of the causes. Now it's made the most important of the causes. Another example. We need to stop murders. What's the obvious cause of murders, Mr. Criminal Brooks? Guns. This man needs to be executed. Why does he be executed? What do you do for a living? He sells guns. Therefore, he is immoral. Okay, so Mr. Brooks sells guns, and guns are the cause of murder. So, what kind of cause of murder? Is it the final cause of murder? It is for him because he needs more guns, so the guy who owns guns shoots him to get his guns. But anybody else, are guns the final cause of murder? No. Are guns the efficient cause? No. Are they the formal cause? No. Murder is a person unjustly. No. It's the material cause. It's the gun, the thing you used. Now, if the material cause of guns was murder, then what would be impossible to happen in the year 873? What could never happen in 873? There could be no murder in 873. Impossible. Why not? Because the cause of murder equals guns. 873, there are no, and there were no guns. Therefore, in 873, it was impossible to become murdered. The only problem is, how did husbands die in China in 873? Their wives took an iron skillet and did what? Implanted it on their head. We had a lady in Kentucky here in 1820 who their house was attacked by, around 1820s, was attacked by 5 Indians. Her husband got shot and wounded, laid on the ground. He had his Kentucky long rifle, and he had it aiming towards the chimney. His son, 5 years old, held up the rifle front. And Mommy stood at the door with a skillet. The Indians finally broke in. The first guy jumped in, no hoopla. Second Indian jumped in, no hoopla. Third Indian jumped in, no hoopla. Fourth Indian said, why is there no noise in there? Because what did she greet him with? She greeted him with the iron skillet. When they came in, so 3 of them are dead. There are 2 more Indians. They realized the dad was wounded, and she could only guard the door with the skillet. So they sent the next Indian down the chimney. Kentucky long rifle, 5-year-old cold kid holding the rifle part, daddy with the trigger. What happened to the 4th Indian? But he also became unhappy. He went down the chimney like Santa Claus, but he didn't go back up. The other guys decided to leave and find something else to do. Now, he had a gun. He killed one of the Indians. How'd the other 3 die? Iron skillet, right? So the fact is, if guns were the cause of murder, then in 873, murder would be impossible. It turns out in 873, murder was a pretty popular activity at the time. It happened in 873. The material cause of guns didn't cause murder. So material cause is involved in murder because to murder someone, what do you have to do? What did the girl do? What did she use? What material cause did she use? Nice, heavy iron skillet. She used a nice, heavy iron skillet to send someone into the next life. The guy used a Kentucky long rifle to send the guy to the next life. Other people have used knives. You can use a car. There are many things you can use. A rock. The material cause is, of all the causes, the last and least important of the causes, and it depends 100% on the other three causes. Murder would be killing an innocent person. Self-defense would be defending yourself. What's happening is you're defending your life, formal cause. You're killing an innocent person, formal cause. You're using a rock, you're using a gun, you're using a car. There's a lot of options. You're using a pill, you're using medication. There's about 1 billion options in material cause. Efficient cause, there aren't so many options. So efficient cause, there's less options. The final cause, there are less options there as well. But there's these efficient and final and formal causes are the ones that matter, and the least important is the material cause. And it's the least involved in the crime. It is involved, or in the good act, either the good act or the crime. The material cause is involved, but it's the least involved and the last involved. We are now in a materialistic society. And this society is given to us by, I'm going to take a break here, Charles Darwin. He really led us on the path of men being materialistic. Because the teaching of Charles Darwin is that what caused a dog to have 4 legs? It wasn't caused on the outside by God. Wasn't caused by aliens. Wasn't caused by any external cause. The dog itself decided to grow 4 legs because it was more efficient than having 3. So he grew 4 legs. He added his teeth. He added his stomach. The cause came from the inside. How did the first living thing come into being? A rock decided it was bored and wanted to go places. So the rock, therefore, became dirt. And the dirt became grass. And the grass became an ant. So that somehow, if I have a material cause, it's going to somehow cause everything else. We're in a materialistic society where we believe what matters is the material, right? The material. If you have a really big gun and a really big sword, you can defend yourself, right? What if you're paralyzed? What if they drop a nuke on you? What if they send a drone? So you can't necessarily depend on the material cause to defend you or protect you. But there are 4 causes to everything. Most important, the formal cause, what it is. This is dining table. The nature of it tells me a lot about it. I can use it for a lot of things. It's a dining table. It has 4 legs on it. If I don't have a baseball bat and the neighbor comes in to rob my china, what can I do with one of those legs? Or you can take the whole table, like in the cowboy movies. You can take the whole table and you can smash it over his head, use it as a weapon. You can pull off the stick. And what is it all dependent upon? The nature of what it is. This is wood. The formal cause that tells me what I can do with it. The material cause is the least cause of all of the things inside of it. But in any case, we'll close for a few minutes here and then take a few minute break. I need some. Let's go ahead and say a quick prayer, then we'll take a few minute break. What did it seem to, when we started, was it 11? 11:30. It was 11:30. Okay, yeah, okay. Let's go ahead and say a prayer here then. In the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen. Glory be to the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost. St. Vincent Ferrer, St. Jude, Lady of Victory, Lady of Sorrows, Lady Help of Christians, and the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen. So, We'll switch over next time to the moral philosophy here. Now, we'll see